Welcome everyone to the Really Big Fan podcast. We've got our longest episode yet today with our special guest Erica Banas, and we've got, of course, the headlines we're going to hit. We're going to talk about our serotonin boost, and as always, I'll introduce you to my co-host Acronym.
Hello. How we doing today? And I want to emphasize something real quick because I'm the one that drinks the caffeine in this house. I'm the one that's really crazy into pop culture references and things like that. So I want to say that we have our first female guest today.
It's true.
The first female guest.
Won't be the last.
Won't be the last. And I need to tell you about this woman just before we get started because she's an award-winning WW. She is always right. She is a rock reporter and a music maven across all genres of music.
That's true.
And she is half of the One Fall Show podcast tag team champions, Mankind with PMS, Erica motherfucking Banas.
I think that with the show being retired, I think the championships may have also been retired. But
no, I still have my championship. Screw you. I will hold that championship till my death.
Yeah. So Erica is going to be joining us today to talk of her love of the creator of Gilmore Girls, whose name escapes me.
Amy Sherman-Palladino.
There you go. Which is not a good sign for how much I will have learned by the time today is over.
I'll throw you some really softballs.
Okay, I hope so.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's get started. Let's hit them headlines. This week is Free Comic Book Day. It's coming up on Saturday, May I think it's the 6th, I want to say. And for Free Comic Book Day, a lot of comic book companies try and make sure they put their best foot forward for Free Comic Book Day. And DC Comics has published Batman 900 this week, or issue 135 of the current run of Batman. It features Batman fighting a version of the Red Hood in like a multiverse, and chasing him through a Batman multiverse. And he visits, without spoiling, I just want to say I flipped through it, and he visits every kind of major relevant Batman multiverse you can imagine, whether it's the 66 show or the animated series or even some others that you're like, holy crap, I can't believe they went there. So if you're a Batman fan, or if you're just, a comic book fan, then it's definitely worth taking a look-see through. I'm not a big Batman person myself, and I was like, that's neat. That's all right. Also, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is supposed to come out May the 12th, but according to Kotaku, people are getting their hands on it like 2 weeks early, and they even posted an article this morning about things we're learning from the leaks from people who have gotten the game 2 weeks early. I saw there's a bit of a kerfuffle on Twitter because some people are like, this is why Kotaku doesn't have a lot of respect in the gaming community. And then there's other people that like, Nintendo comes down so hard on people all the time that like, fuck them. Tell us about the game we're excited about 2 weeks early. We don't give a shit.
I mean, at this point, everything is just anarchy, so it happens.
Right. I don't know exactly where I fall on. I know I like reading the Kotaku articles, but I know that like it seems like that's with any source, any media outlet. Like there's always people especially on Twitter, that are like, that place is garbage, and let me tell you why. And I've even been one of those people about certain media sources.
Well, there's two ways to cut this. First of all, Kotaku sounds a lot like the BuzzFeed for nerds.
Yeah, kind of.
Because people really like hate BuzzFeed as well. But like on the flip side of the thing, it's like, if somebody's talking about that, unfortunately, that's how media works. When I used to be part of a media machine, you were very tailored to what you're allowed to talk about.
Yep.
But also on the flip side, it's like, well, we got to get the hits. We got to get the clickbait. And I, for one, am not a fan of clickbait. But the second thing is people on Twitter are just miserable. So no matter what, they're not happy. Like, people go to Twitter to bitch about things.
Right, exactly. Nobody's bitching about us yet.
Not yet. We're not big enough yet.
I guess.
We got to piss people off some more.
All right.
We got to be crazy about it.
Yeah, we'll have to get some hot takes. Maybe we'll have to start a new segment with a hot take.
I know a hot take I could do right now. For
All right.
Headline.
It's the first segment, the first hot take segment on Really Big Fan Pod. Acronym. Hit us with a hot take. Make the internet angry.
All right. Internet get angry at the fact that you can put whoever the hell you want into the Rock Hall. They don't have to be a rock group.
Amen.
Like,
agree.
there's no reason for that. And honestly, like, that is something, because I say this because the Rock Hall inductees have been announced this morning. We've got Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, Missy Elliott, George Michael, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, The Spinners, DJ Kool Herc, Link Ray, Shaka Khan, Al Cooper, Bernie Taubin, and Don Cornelius. Now, once you got past the Spinners and Shaka Khan, I have no clue who the rest of those people are. Right. But like the big ones are Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, Missy Elliott, George Michael, Willie Nelson, and Rage Against the Machine. Like, out of those guys, it's amazing, but you look at that as well and go like, okay, well, Rage Against the Machine is really the only rock act in that group.
Yeah, but God bless Willie Nelson.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, no hate to Willie Nelson whatsoever.
Right.
But, like, you look at that and go, like, this is not it's not AC/DC. It's not Metallica. It's not, like, those considered rock genres.
Yeah.
And every year I watch people, even radio station personnel, fighting people online about this because it's like, no matter what, rock wasn't even, like, not to go on the political side, but rock was not a white person's thing.
Sure.
That was brought forth by many black artists.
Yeah.
And black artists' music has also evolved from, just rock to having hip hop and all of these other things as well.
Exactly.
So I feel like rock and roll is more of a state of mind, and that's the reason why I feel that way.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
But there are other people like Chris Jericho, for instance, who is really pissed about this and was tweeting about this morning.
Right.
And you just look at that and go like, did you think Fozzy was going to get in? Because they weren't.
I mean, Judas was a big deal, but
It's
still going to be
It's
a while.
only a big deal because it's a wrestling theme.
It's still going to be a while.
I'm sorry, Chris Jericho. I'm not trying to be mean, but...
So there you go. You're picking a fight with Chris Jericho, who at one time said that you were the best part of the show that we were previously doing.
Well, it's a bad take. I'm sorry, man.
It's a hot take.
No, I mean, his is a bad take.
Oh, his is a bad
His is a bad take.
All right.
Let people be in the Rock Hall, damn it.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's my my hot take for today.
There you go. Clip that. Stick it on the internet. Get us some
Piss people off.
Get us some pissed off viewers. A couple more things I wanted to hit. They released the teaser to Twisted Metal that's going to be on the Peacock Network this summer. Last Friday, it features our first view of Samoa Joe as Sweet Tooth. Which is going to be fascinating. It'll be fascinating to see if he voices the character as well as plays. Like, physically, he's the right build for that character. But also, it's like, we watched that show. I can't even remember what it was called. It was Blood Drive.
Yeah.
On friggin' Sci-Fi Channel. Mm-hmm. Like, that was essentially Twisted Metal.
Was
like,
it?
It's like, the cars don't run on blood, but it's just car combat. Like, it's just Fast and Furious, the video game. I don't know. I'm sure they're going to do a good job. I mean, they've made Halo. They're doing a Gran Turismo movie. The Super Mario movie was good. Like, you can translate video games into TV shows and movies, and it does work. But, like, Twisted Metal seems so, like, such a basic game premise. Like, we're all going to get in these cars with these wild characters, and we're going to drive around and shoot at each other with missiles and machine guns. That, like, okay, I guess we'll see.
I did like Blood Drive. I'm sad I didn't finish it, but it like they ended the one season, but it was crazy. It was crazy. I think part of it was I liked it because the guy that was the lead played Thad Castle in Blue Mountain State.
Sure.
And yes, I did watch all of Blue Mountain State. It's awful and amazing.
A recognizable star goes a long way when it comes to anything, whether it's a TV or a movie.
Very true.
To make you go like, oh, well, now I'm interested because I know that guy's face.
Yeah, I think I did that when we saw the Indiana Jones trailer for the new one, and I was like, oh my god, it's Mads!
Yep.
And like instantaneously, I'm so much more interested because Mads Mikkelsen's there.
Right, exactly. The last thing I wanted to hit on is that they announced last week the voice cast for next summer's Transformers animated movie that's going to be on Cybertron, Transformers 1. Orion Pax, who Optimus Prime was before he was Optimus Prime, will be voiced by Chris Hemsworth. His kind of on-again, off-again girlfriend in the cartoons, Elita 1, is going to be voiced by Scarlett Johansson. Keegan-Michael Key will be Bumblebee. And the guy who played Miles Morales' dad, Jefferson, in the Spider-Verse movies, Brian Tyree Henry, will be Megatron. And it's supposed to take place before the war.
Weird.
So, like, Megatron and Orion Pax will probably be good, buddies. This will show you where the lovers' quarrel begins between the two of them.
Definitely an interesting, notable cast for that. I wouldn't have pegged any of those people to play that. I think the Megatron one is the only one I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
But like
Lawrence Fishburne and John Hamm are also going to be in it.
Oh, wow.
As different characters. But
I really hope Lawrence Fishburne has a delivery like, use the ladies' room from Hannibal in one of his lines, or else it's not worth it. It's kind of like, why do you hire Samuel L. Jackson if he doesn't get to drop an F-bomb?
Exactly.
Which, speaking of, not to go talking into too much Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, but there is a clip circulating in which there will be an F-bomb in the first Guardians movie. And I'm wondering how Samuel L. Jackson is taking that news.
Yeah.
Because it's not him.
That's fair.
I won't say who it is because I don't want to spoil it for you.
I also feel if the Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to have its first F-bomb, that's the crew that would drop it.
Absolutely. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Between Rocket and Star-Lord, and even Gamora to some degree. Like, if somebody in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to drop an F-bomb, it'd probably be somebody in that crew.
I'm going to round out our news today with one more headline.
Okay.
And this jumps from Guardians to James Gunn to DC side of things. Obviously, we heard Pixie's Where Is My Mind in the Suicide Squad movie, and he'd been saying he wanted to use that for years, but it was one of those things where it didn't land right for a Marvel movie, but with DC, he has more, corrupted control with that. That song is in the headlines today because apparently last year, Google rolled out a feature that had users to turn off their alarms by just saying stop. But a lot of people had Where Is My Mind as their alarm. So when they start the song and she goes, "Ooh, stop," it was shutting people's alarms off. That has caused people to sleep through it or miss their alarm, and the Pixies have released an apology.
That's funny.
For that.
Who wakes up to Where Is My Mind?
I mean, it's an interesting choice. I would pick Chop Suey from System of a Down to abruptly scare me.
I guess the snare roll at the beginning is kind of loud, might wake you up, but I
would assume it's a soft, because if you start from the beginning, it's very quiet.
That's what I mean.
And then once you hit that first
you're better off choosing a Nirvana song or even a Green Day song where they really, really messed with the quiet, loud songwriting style.
Well, yeah, it depends on if you want to be scared awake or if you want to gradually wake up.
Well,
because I think that's what that is.
If you use Lithium, then it would be it'd be the verse, and then he'd come in with a yeah, and it would wake you up. But
says the guy that is the love child of Billy Corgan and Kurt Cobain.
That's true.
All right.
We
got to hydrate and we got to move on to our interview.
It's true.
So we're going to do that now with Miss Erica Banas, who we love immensely.
It's very true.
I really want to stress how much I love Erica.
And
I know that some of you nerds are not interested in Gilmore Girls, but just let us have our fun.
All right, we'll be back with the Really Big Fan Podcast and Erica Banas next.
Back on the Really Big Fan Podcast, and today we have, as I already introduced earlier, Miss Erica Banas. How you doing?
You are catching me at a very unique time in my life. So let me just briefly go into this. I have easily had the best start of a week ever. Yesterday we had a dishwasher installed in our house. We have been without one for 8 months. We had a dishwasher, and my husband and I lived in our apartment. We moved here. There was no dishwasher. And we're like, we'll get one eventually. And we finally did. And I can't remember the last time I've been this happy. I don't remember.
Isn't it interesting how that happens? It's like when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh man, I'm going to this concert, I'm doing this thing. And then when you're in your like 30s, you're like, I really love dishwashers. I have kitchenware.
Yeah. Well, it's just the fact that like 8 months of scrubbing and washing everything by hand. I swear, like the very nice man that installed it, I'm like, I think his name is Tim. I'm like, Tim, you got like, I wanna cry right now. This is
I want to give you a hug. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And then Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon both got fired. I'm like, what a day. Oh, everything's coming up, Erica.
So you're coming on today because you want to talk about Amy Sherman-Palladino properties.
Yes.
Obviously, I know a lot about Gilmore Girls. I speak the language. I drink the coffee. I know the things. But for this one right here,
I know nothing.
He knows nothing. So we're going to teach him today the marvels of this, okay? And there will be a quiz.
Okay.
So you got to pay attention.
All right.
Okay. Great. Now you added that caveat of pressure.
Yeah, it's a quiz on him, not a quiz on you. So you're fine.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So, the first thing I wanted to ask is obviously, like, I assume that your first intro to Amy Sherman-Palladino was Gilmore Girls, or was it before that something like a couple of the Roseanne episodes?
It was Gilmore Girls. It wasn't until like I think I really got into the fandom where I started doing the deep dive on Amy. And learning like about how she started off like her big break was in the writer's room for Roseanne, and I guess she had like 2 different entertainment paths at that point. She was a writer, but she was also a dancer. So so in mental preparation for this show, I've realized, oh my God, I love this woman so much because once again, this is where the vanity comes in. I feel like she's I'm very much like her.
Yeah, because you know what? One of my things was going to be, so is the hat thing that you do much inspired by Amy, or is that just something that happened and it's so cool? She's got this like crazy amount of hats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like like you could look up photos of Amy Sherman-Palladino. I don't know why I'm holding my microphone right here, right now. I'm just very
so excited.
The hat thing was, I think, part of the. I'm like, we both like hats. We both like coffee. We both used to dance. We both live on pop culture references and dropping them casually just to see if anyone notices. And I'm like, oh my God, this could be like a lost auntie.
Yep, soul sister of some sort.
Yeah, and it's. I highly recommend looking up anytime she's like talking. Specifically, like when she won Emmys for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, her acceptance speech is top drawer. Fantastic.
It looks like she's partial to the top hat. The quick search.
I love a good top hat. I have one. I have 2 actually.
Wasn't your Stevie one a top hat?
Yes. That's more of a. I for those of you who are backstory, since the 3 of us have a history with each other, I was Stevie Nicks for Halloween one year. I bought this really cool costume top hat. It's very cool. But then I was in Philadelphia for work, and I stumbled upon this hat shop, and then I found like this leather top hat, and it's got that good leather smell. And then I'm like, well, this is mine now. It's my hat.
Was it the one you had to mail from there?
Yes, because I only packed a carry-on. I should have thought like, no, you should maybe, you might do some shopping. No, and like, yeah, it was. I didn't think that went through. So the place of work where I was visiting, were like, we can mail the hat to you. I'm like, yes, score, because I would have looked crazy walking through like, because I wore a hat, from Detroit to Philadelphia, I would surely look silly wearing a hat, carrying a hat. Oh, hello. I don't look suspicious at all.
You switch hats in the middle of the afternoon at noon every day. The hat has to switch.
You would look like a Batman villain walking through the airport.
Well, additionally, okay, and then we'll get back to Amy Sherman-Palladino. I was clearly suspicious to TSA because when they looked, they ran my thing through my carry-on through the X-ray. They pulled it over, and I'm like, okay. And of course, everything in there is dirty, and they're going through just nasty drawers and everything. And they found the little urn that had my brother's ashes in it.
Oh,
and I
no.
took his ashes, like, yeah, there were no more ashes in there at that point.
Yeah.
I had scattered his ashes on the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, with the Rocky steps, because he was a big Rocky fan. So so they're examining this what looks to be a paperweight. They're very confused. I go, if I may, that's a mini urn, and yeah, I think those are my exact words. And because then they're like, okay, and then eventually, like, someone else talked to someone else. They're like, she can go. So I'm like, oh, thank you. But anyway, Amy Sherman-Palladino, and honestly, the way we're talking now is kind of. It's to say, I mean, I clearly am inspired by, her writing, the cadence with which she writes. At the same time, though, this is kind of how I grew up too. So I think there was a comfort watching, especially Gilmore Girls, because there's obviously, I'm very close to my mother. She didn't have me when she was 16. But like there is a closeness there that is akin to Lorelai and Rory that I definitely identify with. And then oddly enough, like my dad, who is basically, when you look at Richard Gilmore, my dad's basically the blue collared Richard Gilmore. He like there's an integrity about him. There's a sort of seriousness about him. But like he can still like have a good laugh every now and again. Like there was very unique parallels watching this show. And then, also an undercurrent in all of her properties is music. If you recall,
Paul Anka.
I mean, well, first of all, they named the dog Paul Anka. Obvious. But like you look at someone like Lane, who is Rory's best friend, who is like music obsessed. There are like passages from Lane alone where I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel like that was me. That was me.
That character is really solid, and like down the line, then you end up getting Sebastian Bach as a guest star to play in their band, and he's way older than everyone else. It's really funny.
First of all, like, okay, so Sebastian Bach plays a guy named Gil who joins the local Stars Hollow rock band. And probably one of my I also secretly hope Sebastian Bach is like that, and I think he is, because I mean he's like a decent actor, like he's done like stage work and whatnot, but I'm like, really feel like maybe Sherman-Palladino wrote this and said like, hey, can we get Sebastian Bach? This guy is basically Sebastian Bach, and they're like, is he available? And he went, yeah, and then yeah. He
had a fun character from what I can remember. It's been a while since I've watched all of those seasons, because I've watched them a couple times, especially for some reason I would watch, and this is no surprise to him, there were specific seasons that I would stop at, that I'd watch repeatedly, and I felt like I watched like the first couple seasons over and over and over again. But like as she got into like deeper into college and was like with Logan and stuff, I kind of only have watched that once or twice. And there's so much, and I feel like this is something that we can expand on a little bit, is there's so much world building that she does in Gilmore Girls. Like everybody in the town is an integral part to the story. It's not just Lorelai and Rory, who are a mother and daughter duo essentially. Okay. And Lorelai had Rory when she was very young. It was like one of those like unwed pregnancy situations or whatever. But this whole town, it's almost like one of those it takes a village to raise a child situation. but
yeah.
like Rory is very capable and very good at being in a like an older soul because of the way that her and her mother are. But at the same time, everybody's so intricately involved. Like you're talking, like you have the neighborhood, you got Taylor Dozy being so controlling over the city or whatever, and you have Babette and the dance teacher, and I'm blanking on the name there. But and even Kirk does half the world building on his own, which is Sean Gunn.
Okay.
So he and I was actually looking this up. The first like episode, he's not even named Kirk, he's named something else. And then later on he's introduced as Kirk, and then as Kirk the rest of the time. But the way that it's funny, I'm going to tie this into a nerd thing real quick. How Sean Gunn has been so involved in all of like the Guardians stuff and everything else, because his brother is James Gunn, the director. He has played multiple characters within the MCU as well. So it was thinking about it today. I'm just going, wow, Sean Gunn is just like, he's that guy that they're like, we're going to stick you in all the roles. But that was actually his role in Gilmore Girls, was he did everything in the city. Anytime you went to a specific location, you went to a coffee shop, you went down the street to the store, he was working there. He's basically the way that
so what you're saying,
Stacy Pilgrim is.
What you're saying is Sean Gunn is the cornerstone of whatever project he's a part of.
Pretty much, yes. That's what I'm saying, is that we need to give Sean Gunn more credit.
All right.
But yeah, it's very much like not Stacy Pilgrim, but what is Audrey Plaza's name? And
Julie.
Yeah. It's just like that.
Yeah.
Every character, like every story you go to is Kirk. Right. So how do you feel about that world building? Like, do you think I'm kind of hitting the nail on the head with that, where it's like the whole town is very invested in who they are?
Oh yeah. I mean, they're invested in obviously the Gilmore, but I think it's just the town as a whole. And it's just this very lush, just living experience. I think one of my favorite jokes though about it, I can't remember who, I'm sure it was on Twitter, but someone's like, yeah, Gilmore Girls made me fantasize about living in a walkable city.
It's true. It's true. They only had one blinking light in town.
Right. And like they have like the town square, and they have the various like offshoot neighborhoods. But like there's an innocence, there's a quaintness, especially in those early seasons. And like it's so funny reading like retrospective pieces on it, and like seeing people being like, I really didn't care for those seasons. Like I love those early seasons because it was simple. It was, I did, there the problems were very black and white. And once Rory gets into college and gets kind of introduced really to like some of the more rich kids for background for Chuck, Lorelai, the mom, who, she grew up in a very well-to-do family. Her father is like a high profile, like insurance guy. Either way, they're low. So like when she took Rory and basically left to start off on her own because like she just couldn't live in that existence anymore. Like she basically, put behind all those rich luxuries. But then, the whole premise that like at the start of the show, Lorelai gets Rory into this really high profile prep school. That's the dream was for Rory to go to Harvard, and like this fancy schmancy school was going to get her. And the problem was, Lorelai couldn't afford the tuition. So what does she do? She has to go to her parents, ask for help with tuition, and then because she's been kind of absentee for years, the mom puts a caveat on it, like, okay, we will pay for this, but the two of you have to come to dinner here every Friday so we can like be a family. So like she makes that sacrifice for to better Rory's education. But some would argue that like by doing that, she Rory then goes into that whole rich society world. And I think Rory is actually the total piece of shit. Like, she's probably one of my least favorite characters as the series goes on, and especially in the not the reboot, but like the sequel movie series that Netflix did. but yeah, like that's obviously like my in route to Amy Sherman-Palladino. But like the second show, she did a show for, I think it was ABC Family at the time. It's called Bunheads. Bunheads was about a dance studio. Like the whole okay, so it opens with a showgirl. This showgirl played by Sutton Foster, who's actually from Troy, Michigan.
Oh,
She's
wow.
a big,
Nice.
yeah, big Broadway star now. And like just just an incredible talent. She plays this showgirl, and she has kind of like a super fan played by Alan Ruck, who was in Succession, and obviously was Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the whole premise of like the pilot, he keeps going backstage to like, try to woo her and go on a date with her, and eventually she says yes, and then they get like hammered, and then they end up getting married.
Oh,
So,
no.
All right.
So now that they're married, they go back to his hometown where his mother lives and where her dance studio is. His mother lives like on this beautiful property. The dance studio is on that property. He says it was his house, but actually it's I guess technically he has the house, but his mother lives there because the dance studio. Anyway, so this small town is leery about this new outsider coming in who Hubble, his name is Hubble, who Hubble married suddenly. And then the episode closes with the mom in the show, who is played by the mom by Kelly Bishop, who plays oh my god, why can't I remember her name?
There's
Jesus Christ.
Emily Gilmore.
Emily
and,
Gilmore. Yeah.
she's also in Dirty Dancing, the mom.
Okay.
Yes. And actually Kelly Bishop also comes from the world of Broadway. So we're in a bar, Sutton Foster. Sutton Foster, it's Kelly Bishop, they're in a bar, they're hanging out, and then they start to, she goes, well, if you're gonna be my fan, I'm gonna have to be able to dance with you. So she puts on Jim Croce, and they start dancing to Don't Mess Around with Jim. And then all of a sudden this person walks in who has a crush on Hubble, and apparently got into a car accident with Hubble and dies.
Oh,
That's how the pilot ends.
yikes.
It's fucking crazy. So the whole premise of the show only lasted 18 episodes, which is a travesty because it's a beautiful show. And obviously I had a big attachment to it because I took dance lessons for 10 years very. So it covers obviously this relationship with the mom, Sutton Foster's character, and then the young ladies who take lessons at her dance studio. And it's very Gilmore-esque with pop culture references and everything. It's basically like, what if Gilmore Girls had a really fucked up pilot? And then instead of taking place in Connecticut, it took place in sunny California. And it just, it's a coming of age tale. It's funny, it's smart. And, like I said, I had a real strong attachment to it just because I grew up dancing, and I know like that really shaped who I was as a child. And like it really instilled a sense of discipline and work ethic. And I can honestly say, like, without it, I don't know who I would be. Because it also kind of, it really introduced me into the power of music and how music kind of like, can touch someone, and like how it can just kind of live inside your soul. And, obviously now I write about music for a living, and my relationship with music can really go back to being 4, 5, 6 years old, dancing in this studio, in this, wonderful, I hate to say cliche safe space, but it was like, some of my best childhood memories came from dance. And yeah, I have no idea who I would be.
Yeah, so that definitely leaves like an attachment to that show. And it's interesting too, like zooming out on Amy Sherman-Palladino, I was looking into like her background, and her mom was also a dancer. And there was there was a little bit of pushback, I think, from what I could tell from her bio, that it was like, you know, she ended up going into TV instead of the dancing, and her mom wasn't entirely thrilled about that. So maybe this was her way of like bringing that dance stuff back into her, you know, her sphere of creativity.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, because you know it clearly had a big impact. And the fact that, you know, she was deciding, well, interestingly enough, her father was a comedian. So she had these fields of comedy, these fields of dance. And then that leads conveniently into the third major property from her, which is currently on Amazon Prime right now, which is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So have either of you watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
No, I haven't, honestly.
I know that I saw a trailer for it on Amazon, so like I got the gist of like what the show was, at least in like season 1.
Is that the same? Is it the actress? I can't remember if it's the same show I'm thinking of. No, I'm thinking of Fleabag. I was gonna say, is that the person that's in the Indiana Jones thing? Ignore me.
That's fine. But with Mrs. Maisel, you know, it's, you know, she has said before, like, this show, you know, that show is definitely kind of a tribute to her dad, who was a stand-up, and he worked in comedy. And the show itself is loosely inspired by the life of Joan Rivers, who obviously, you know, like coming up in comedy, like, you know, she, you know, it was the 50s and 60s, and she was, you know, this brassy broad who, you know, was, you know, very Jewish, very married, and very much a mom. And yet she was pursuing comedy, which was definitely, one, not a field for women. 2, not a field for mothers. And 3, not a field for wives. So like she was, you know, the show, you know, basically follows Midge Maisel, who's played by Rachel Brosnahan, who was brilliant. It follows, you know, her ups and downs of her comedy career. And Alex Borstein, who does the voice of Lois on Family Guy, she plays Susie, who's ends up being Midge's manager, but she owns a comedy club, or runs a comedy club in the Village of New York. And it's, you know, it's just, it has all the big Amy Sherman-Palladino hits, fast dialogue, references, like there's a lot of dance numbers and like big like musical numbers in it too. You know, definitely a love of entertainment. It is my shit. Like I love this show so much, and it's, you know, for anyone who's a fan of Amy Sherman-Palladino, like it's, you know, one could say it might be better than Gilmore Girls, and I only say that because they're dealing with Amazon money, and let's face it, the WB, which aired Gilmore Girls, did not have that kind of money. Even though it was a quality show, but like like if you were to watch maybe like a couple episodes of the first season, the production value is fucking bonkers. It's crazy. It's like it's kind of amazing to like see, like, look how far you've come. I don't know this woman. I've never met her, but like at the same time, like during that first season, I was genuinely proud of her. I'm like, look at you. Look at what you've done. Look at you. It was great.
And with the thing that I've kind of noticed too, you were kind of talking about how there was a difference in production value and how, you know, some people may say like this is better. I think there's also a subsect, and I don't say this to like beat up Amy Sherman for any reason, but there's a subsect of people that have, of course, gone back and watched like old Gilmore Girls episodes and felt like there were a lot of like things that wouldn't fly today, like things that didn't age well, you know.
Course.
So within that, it's nice to have like as she's grown within her writing properties that reflect an updated sense of those things, because I know there was a lot of stuff that was like talking about some of the toxicity of Rory and Lorelai, or the boyfriends that she had and stuff like that. So I'm sure now it was a little bit different and edited to be more up to date with the standards that we have now socially.
Well, Well, it's interesting too that you mentioned that, because yes, like when you look back on like certain Gilmore Girls episodes, if I do like a rewatch or whatever, like there are certain lines that I'm like, oh, that one didn't age well. Oh, you can definitely tell that 2 decades have passed. But like with that consideration, the fact that like that Maisel takes place in the 50s, in like the late 50s. So the fact that with hindsight, she has, like, okay, I have to make this kind of a period piece, but kind of not super period piecey. It's they definitely kind of skirt those issues very brilliantly, if I may say.
Yeah,
Because
they'd probably use it as like a story beat too. Like if something happens, it's like, no, this is more of what we would have hoped would have happened versus
Right.
Yeah, definitely. But like that show's in its final season, and like I have no idea kind of how this thing's gonna wrap up, and it's a wild, it's exciting, and it makes me wonder too. I'm like, okay, so this show's gonna come to an end. Like any writer would, that the gear's got to be grinded away. Like what's going to come next for her? Because like she's not young. She's
Right.
young. Like she's got to be like maybe like her early 50s. So like she's got a lot of. So now it's just me going like, what's the next project going to be, and what kind of characters are they going to be? At the same time, though, I know we've had that conversation about. Not to go all over the place. The criticisms of Mindy Kaling and how she's kind of written the same character over and over again. It could be argued that Amy Sherman-Palladino has written the same character.
I thought that when you mentioned the thing about how it was the mom of the guy that died in Bunheads, and then you have Sutton Foster, I was like, so you're having this dynamic again of mother and daughter almost, but now it's like mother and married into the family daughter, and then in Gilmore Girls it's mother, daughter, and daughter. Like you have that generational thing. So is there any like mother type characters going on in Mrs. Maisel? Is there anything like that, or did it shift a little bit?
Well, it's not the mothers who are the repetitive character. It's the star. Like Lorelai and Midge Maisel, and I can't believe I'm blanking on Sutton Foster's character, and it kills me. But like, I highly recommend. Bunheads is on Hulu. Just watch an episode. Because it's very much like, okay, it's no secret that Amy Sherman-Palladino has written herself her main women characters are very much kind of inspired by her. And I know, people can be critical of that, and I understand the criticisms, but as I kind of said with you guys about Mindy Kaling characters, I like the Ramones in that. Which means I like a lot of the same. So it doesn't bother me as much. And if the song is good, and you keep doing the same song a little over and over again, as long as it's at least they have the nerve to copy a good fucking song, So I look at these characters and like, yeah, there are definitely parallels between Lorelai, Sutton Foster. I have to look up what the hell Sutton Foster's name was on that show because it's bothering me. And Midge, but at least she had enough sense to like, yeah, I'm borrowing from each character, but it's a good fucking thing. So so she's got that going for her. Like that's good, right?
Right. So as far as out of all of this stuff, what do you think are some of like your favorite pop culture references that came from these shows?
Oh God. Oddly enough, some of my favorite ones are the ones that are incorrect. Like there's a whole bit in Gilmore Girls where they fuck up hockey references. At one point, like Lorelai says to Rory, "Nice save, Gretzky," and I'm like, Gretzky wasn't a goalie. And then and I'm like, I should have been in the writer's room. Like it's one of the things that like sticks out. And the second hockey thing that they fuck up, there's a whole bit where Lorelai and Rory go to Luke's diner to, because that's where they go, and the joint's empty, and including the counter, and they decide like, oh, we could sit on opposite ends of the counter and play bagel hockey. And at one point, there's a bitch, and either way, it ends with Lorelai saying, he's old news. Put him in Cooperstown. And I'm like, Cooperstown is the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Hockey Hall of Fame is in Toronto. God damn it. So every time, like, those really stick out. When you this is both in Bunheads and Gilmore Girls. When she writes dialogue for these supposed teenage girls, they sure do like referencing random TV and movies from the 1960s. Like
there's a reference in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I remember hearing somebody say, like, she would not have known that. That is a 40-year-old writer in the writer's room showing that, he read this book in college.
Well, it's like, I don't know who Paul Anka is beyond that.
Yeah.
Like, I still couldn't tell you anything about him, but they mentioned him a lot.
I mean, he was a singer. I hope he's
Knock on every piece of wood right now, or we might have just killed him. That is a joke that we have. If we mention someone and then we question if they're alive or dead, we may have killed them.
Yeah.
That'd be the first body count this podcast has.
Like, oh, God, if Paul Anka dies tomorrow, I'm going to be so upset.
We are sorry if. Just in case, we are sorry.
Well, here, now I gotta hold on.
Not yet.
By the way,
now she's gonna look it up. Gotta make sure.
So here's a question for both of you guys.
Yeah.
Like I did a little bit of looking before we got here, so I'd have some kind of frame of reference for what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm of the understanding, after looking through Wikipedia, that she leaves Gilmore Girls before the show is over. Like, they do at least one season without her.
Mm-hmm.
And we're currently watching Community, which also famously has a season without the showrunner. Is it obvious when they're gone, when she's gone from the show? Is it like, what are the things that you can pick out that you're like, this is different now?
Okay. Well, when I first made my husband Eric watch the show, that's right, I made him watch it. Once it's the seventh season, it's the seventh and final season. Amy Sherman-Palladino and her husband, Daniel Palladino, they couldn't come to an agreement with Warner Brothers. Like, it was a big contractual thing. Right. That's what led to her exit. And I remember it must have been like maybe half an episode into the seventh season, and even Eric was like, "Yeah, this is different." Yeah, it just. The cadence with which, like, the character spoken, just the way that they interacted, it was a complete 180 from what it was like. There were still like Gilmore elements, but like it was very obvious that she was not there to put her own personal touch on things.
Interesting.
And like, just from between dialogue and the way people acted. And it's I think I've only watched the seventh season 2 to 3 times all the way through. The rest of that, honestly, like, there's a point in season 5 where I start to like get, and like season 6 is okay. But like it definitely gets, the whole Rory of it all. The whole Luke having a daughter come out of nowhere, it definitely just fucking jumps the shark there. But man, that first 4.5 seasons, perfection.
Definitely.
No
That's why I
notes.
say, like, I only watched certain ones multiple times.
Yeah.
It might have been the 5th season where I dropped off, like, when I will rewatch, because I'm not really as invested in it. But I do remember being really not happy with that 7th season. It kind of felt like it ended weird, you know? And then when they decided they were going to do that Netflix thing, I think you probably remember, like, when we got done watching it, I was still kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this.
I think the tone, I think we were all anticipating the whimsical, fun, happy tone of the Gilmore Girls of old. I think that's what we all anticipated. What we got, though, the whole premise of the, the I don't want to say, no, it's the continuation of the series. It was structured, I don't know if Chuck knows this, it was structured into like 4 movies because, kind of playing in the background of Gilmore Girls, seasons play a big role in the show.
Movies or albums.
Yeah.
If you will. So like there was, it started with, I think, it was winter, spring, summer, and then it ended with the fall. So that's how everything was structured. And unfortunately, the actor who played Richard Gilmore, Edward Herman, had died before this whole thing came about. So a lot of the series was Lorelai, Emily, and Rory coming to grips with the loss of Richard, who obviously played a big role in their lives. And then, Rory's floundering. Like, she went to Yale to be a journalist, and now she's just kind of, everything's up in the air. Like, she
having sex with Wookiees.
As one does.
All right.
She ended up having sex with a guy that was dressed as a Wookiee at one point, is a thing.
So, like, she's spiraling professionally and personally, and like everyone's just in a bad place. And I think, I haven't rewatched those episodes, mainly because it's heavy. You're watching a family grieve. And like, mind you, when it came out, well, this was before my brother passed away, and like, anytime I have to watch something where like I know grieving is involved, like even that, like I'm obviously better than I was when he first died in 2020, but it's still just like, this reminds me of this.
Yeah,
I come to Gilmore Girls for happiness and lightheartedness. I don't want to be met with my own issues. No.
And do you think that has anything to do with the fact that it's almost like I look at shows from the early 90s now, and I think to myself, like, you can't make shows like this anymore because the innocence is gone somehow within just culture in general. I feel like, now if you're trying to make a show that is that lighthearted, you're always going to be faced with, the controlling narrative of present day, no matter what you do. So like, it seems to me like that innocence of that and the innocence of that type of town, like as Stars Hollow, if you look at it as like its own personal living organism, it has such that quaint small town feel, but small towns aren't even like that anymore. So I wonder if even somebody goes back and watches the old episodes that like they'd never seen it before, if it would really translate the same way because of how different the world is now. And it seems like to a degree when they did the Netflix ones, it was coming to that grips of reality of like, this is what more so what the world is like now. But on the flip side of it is watching the shift of Rory's character, because she was always portrayed as like this good girl, this very smart girl, well-behaved, well-adjusted, very like things that, probably like a lot of people can relate to, but also being put on that pedestal because, her mom was in the situation she was. Like, she has the in, and it's not like that isn't not an achievement or anything like that, but Rory being the one to like, okay, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna do like all this crazy extra stuff and everything else, and then she ends up still being such a disaster Like, that was the hard thing that I was having a hard time gripping with watching it, was it's like, this doesn't feel like the same Rory to me. It feels like they're trying to push her to a narrative that she's going to become exactly like Lorelai. And that's how I felt at the end when, spoilers, she ends up pregnant. And it's not the Wookiees.
Oh, well.
Right. Well, look, to explain to Chuck and anybody else listening to this that's not familiar with Gilmore lore, Amy Sherman-Palladino had always said that she knew the final 4 words of the series, and this was how she was always going to end the show regardless. And obviously she couldn't do that because she wasn't involved in season 7, which would have been the final season of the initial run. So when news of this, sequel series came out, the crazy fans were like, "Oh, are we going to hear the final 4 words?" And it's been like this hanging over, like in the fandom, and like so like once it got there, we like I remember like bracing like it's gonna happen. And so the final 4 words were it's Rory. Rory says, "Mom." Lorelai says, "Yeah." And Rory says, "I'm pregnant." End of show. So, like, I remember the first time the only time I watched it, I went, "Oh, come on!" Like, I think I was mad at first, but then thinking about it, like, okay, if she wanted those to be the final 4 words, she wanted her to get pregnant, like, right out of college, which, obviously isn't the same as, being pregnant at 16, but like, graduating college about, 22, 23, still very young.
And daughter out of wedlock or child out of wedlock.
Right. So going back to kind of previously what you said about the whole small town thing, I think it could work because people still like escaping stuff. They don't want to be reminded of the world they live in. They want something.
There's always a market for a Dawson's Creek or a Riverdale.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a second point. Well, I will say one show that I think did do it well. Have either of you watched The Middle?
No.
Okay. Very wholesome family sitcom. Takes place in like a fictional city in Indiana. And it's about this middle class family like living their lives, and like there's 3 kids and 2 parents, and they're just they're going about their lives, and the kids are growing up, and it's the only show I've ever watched where the show gets better as the kids get older. I think we've all seen those shows where like the kids grow up and it's like, well, this show blows. No, the show got better. It's the only time I've ever seen that happen. But anyway, going back to your original point, I think the small townness would work. I mean, you'd have to do it you couldn't do it in like a Leave It to Beaver G Wally kind of way, but you would have to kind of modernize it somehow. And I think, going to Bunheads, like, she was able to kind of modernize it, or at least put a spin on it, because obviously you're dealing with like these people from Connecticut, these weirdos from Connecticut, and then you're dealing with like this like seaside town in California where it's a little bit more, hey man. So like there's just a different vibe. So yeah, I think she you know what they say about that Amy Sherman-Palladino? She's a coastal elite.
It's like Stephen King setting all his stuff in Maine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Then we went to this is just a little interlude here. We went to a coffee shop when they were doing the Netflix thing, because specific designated coffee shops got like a Gilmore Girls Luke's Diner type package. Do you have a mug? Are you looking for that?
Like I feel like I have it in storage somewhere. It's gotta be over here somewhere.
There was a quote on the side of the paper cups. They did have some merch and stuff like that, but it was really cool to have that experience. And they ended up doing it for the locals. It was at ChZuck in Ferndale. Is that considered Ferndale, or is that considered Hazel Park?
I think that's still Ferndale. It's like very east.
Yes.
Burned down.
It was right near where I crashed my car.
Okay.
So it was cool to have that experience. I liked getting to do that, obviously, with you, and we skipped like the first hour of work to go do it. But in the name of work, we're like, we're gonna write about it.
We were gone for like the whole goddamn morning. Who are you kidding? Because this, like, first of all, brilliant marketing ploy. Rebranding local coffee shops around the United States as loops for a day. Hilarious. Brilliant. And because we were in line for a long ass time.
Yeah. There was probably, I want to say, like, for some reason, this number is jumping out at me about this. So I feel like we were like 37 and 38 in line, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why my brain retained that information, but for some reason, that's what my brain is telling me was happening. And it was cool, though. You got to, have that experience. I wish they would have done a teeny bit more inside Chisano for it, like decor or something like that, but like they just kind of had the coffee and the paper cups and stuff like that. But that's why I joked when I was saying, like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna talk about this because I know the lore. I drink the coffee. Coffee is a very big part of the Gilmore Girls situation.
Okay.
And like you've heard, I had that one video that I posted on social media where all it was saying was coffee. That is from Gilmore Girls. It's all these different moments in which either Lorelai or Rory are so invested in needing coffee. And I feel like I identify with that so much, being a caffeine addict.
Right.
So coffee is a big part of that lore. Is there anything that you feel like that people need to know, or specific reasons as to why you'd want anybody to watch any of these shows?
I mean, I think the only thing to really say, like, it's one of those things where, like, okay, do you like smart writing? Do you like, laughter? Do you
Do you like fun?
Because like all of these shows have, I mean, there's different, like, troubling points and like points of contention and stress and whatnot, but for the most part, like, they're just really fun shows. And if you're a fan of, women centered programming, which is, I mean, definitely a hallmark of, even, from her bigger titles to her lesser titles, like, these are shows, I mean, mind you, it is very much, a show written by a white woman. Let's just put that out there. Like, Amy Sherman-Palladino has no business writing for, women of color. But if chatty, whimsical, smart, entertaining, strong white ladies is your thing, watch these shows. They're great.
Do you have any questions?
I think the only other question I thought of was that, is there, I mean, it sounds like Bunheads is obviously your favorite show, but is there, among the fandom that follows her writing, is there a specific show that is kind of universally thought of as like the best thing she's ever done?
I don't know if Bunheads is necessarily my, like, it's hard to say what my favorite show is, because especially the main three for me, like, they mean something different to me, individually. And they kind of, I can connect to them on different ways, and I can relate to them due to certain experiences throughout my, so far, short life. So I've already lost your question, because now I'm thinking, like, well, what is my favorite show?
What is universally,
is
when you talk to other fans of her writing, what is is Gilmore Girls the thing that everyone is like, yeah, that's the best thing she's ever done? Or have one of the other shows kind of surpassed it in the fans' minds?
If any show's going to surpass it, it's probably going to be Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And I mean, simply from a critical standpoint, because Gilmore Girls never won any awards. I think, like, it received very few nominations. When Maisel's first season was nominated for Emmys, like, I'm pretty sure they damn near swept the entire comedy categories. And it felt, I mean, one, they deserved it. That first season is absolutely brilliant, but it certainly felt like, the Television Academy was like, we really dropped the ball on not recognizing Gilmore Girls. So, you did a really good show. So we gotta recognize it for this. I feel like Gilmore Girls is going to be the entry point for a lot of people, mainly because there's the most content around it. And I feel like it is a good place to start, if only to see kind of how, obviously, like there's some similarity in the style of her writing and the way she writes her characters and really this sweet. But it is fascinating to see how much she's grown from, Gilmore Girls premiered in 2000. It's been 23 years. That's a long time. And so like clearly like her storytelling, like there's the core of her and who she is still there, but there is definitely, there is an evolution.
I like to know, I like having the information that Gilmore Girls starts at the peak of nu metal.
And there are a lot of jokes at the expense of nu metal. So you may not like that. You may not like that at all.
I mean, to love nu metal is to also make fun of nu metal.
It's
Let's
true.
be honest. Like
It's
if you are into nu metal and you don't make fun of it, I don't feel like you're truly into it, especially Limp Bizkit.
Well, keep in mind too, like you can I think maybe that's also another reason why I have a strong connection is because the through line, one of the through lines through a lot of these shows is the music use. And like going back to Gilmore Girls, like when there's Rory finally loses her virginity, and she loses it to her first boyfriend, but they're not together at that point, and he's married, so it's sticky. But the song playing in the background on the radio is Lou Reed's "Satellite of Love." I love Lou Reed so much. So like having like songs like that, or having there's like the really good usage of Bowie in it was The Man Who Sold the World. It's so, but I shouldn't even go down this rabbit hole. But either way, it soundtracks Lane Kim's first kiss with like her first boyfriend, and it's just that type of warm fuzzy feeling where it's just like just hook it into my veins. This is it.
It's good needle drops. There's a lot of good needle drops.
Yeah.
Did you ever like learn of any music from it?
I probably learned about a lot of people probably learned who Claudine Loget is from Gilmore Girls. She is just a French pop star, and I think she may have killed someone. Either way, she a sticky personality. But there's like I think it might have been in the first or second season where Lane puts her on. They're at Rory and Lorelai's house, and Lorelai at this point was still in community college trying to study business, and so they're playing this music, and she's like, "Who is this?" And at this point, it's Claudine Loget. Or I think the girl who killed the skier. It was yeah. So like there's that for sure. There's a great exchange with Lane, who has do you guys know Mojo magazine?
I don't.
Okay. It's a UK publication. Brilliant. I bought so many copies of it in college, and like it at Barnes and Noble, and I paid the cover price, which was probably like $12 for a fucking magazine, but I could piss away my money. Yeah, I could piss away my money back then because I was 20 and I didn't have a fucking care in the world. So I'm like, yeah, $12 for a magazine. But they have a book of like 1,001 albums you should hear before you die. And there's a record store near Rory's fancy prep school, and you see there it opens and Lane's like, okay, I need this title, and at one point she goes, the Bee Gees this, and Lorelai goes, what? And she goes, well, Mojo says. And she goes, and then she names off a bunch of other titles. She goes, and after that, I will have made my way through the 60s. And so it's like it's little it's little nods and stuff like that. Like there's a great scene in like I think the second episode where she comes over and she has the latest album from Ecstasy. And so like it all of a sudden like they start playing after the house, and then Lane is found in Rory's room skanking to just Rancid, and Lorelai opens the door. She's like, yeah, Lane, where does your mother think she is? I'm sure she knows you're not, at our house skanking to Rancid. So like it's little things like that. So like it's just a smart show.
I feel like I identified a lot with that character. As a side note, like Lane and her mom, there was a lot of that. I mean, like, there's a lot of cultural codedness because Lane is of Asian descent. So there's a lot of that. I feel like some of that, the way that they painted those characters could probably be perceived as not so good at this point. But one of the things that was with Lane was like because of that, she wasn't allowed to listen to certain things at home. She had, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, she had like a floorboard that moved and would keep all of her CDs hidden under the floorboards so her mom wouldn't find them. And I felt like there was something about that was very identifiable to me, just because of the way that I, like, not to get messy with me, but like how I was brought up. A lot of the things that I was really interested, I kind of had to hide them because they were perceived not okay by my parents' standards, even though like it wasn't even bad stuff. It was just culture, things that my age wanted to see, my age wanted to enjoy. And something about Lane was very like, she had that attitude of like, once she found more music and more things, she was more rebellious, she was more interested. She starts this band and all this other stuff and kind of comes into her own. And I thought like that character was very well built, but her character is very much a vehicle of connecting with music overall, which made that very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, when the show, I didn't even watch the show during its initial run. I came across it like in syndication and like just hearing other people talk about it. And a lot of times people would say to me, like, you should watch this show. This character Lane is basically you, except your mother's not overbearing. And if I wanted to rebel, like I would have just listened to folk music. So yeah, like it was little differences like that. But like
Erica's in her room listening to Dylan again.
Look, if you ever want to, like, when you see my mother again, if you ever want her to go on a rant, just be like, hey, Linda, what are your thoughts on Joni Mitchell? And she will go off. So yeah, if I ever wanted to rebel against my mother, I would have just brought home a copy of Glue and just played it. Yeah, just played it. Oh, I raised you better than this.
This will be my last little question here, because we both went into music journalism, and it's like I know that yours is like more like you identify yours as like almost famous as your entry point to journalism. But did you ever feel like part of that could have been also like Rory going to school for journalism and those connections with music within the show? Because we both watched the show at like a somewhat formative age. Like, do you feel like that at all contributed to that?
Maybe slightly, because like once again, I didn't watch the show during its initial run. I graduated from high school in 2005. And I think like I'd probably gone into the show during college. So like at this point, like I knew I'm like, this is the thing I want to do. I want to be a writer and pursue that. And if anything, it maybe didn't steer me on the way, but it maybe just kind of confirmed like, yeah, you're gonna be okay. Yeah, you gotta go do it. Go do this thing. Do this thing that everyone says is a terrible idea. In the middle of a recession.
Yes.
Struggle for like 18 months after graduation. And eventually, you'll come out on the other.
It's all worth it in the end.
One of these days, you're going to be thrilled by getting a dishwasher installed. Okay. it's all gonna work out. It's all gonna work out in the end. You just gotta work your way through it, kid. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
All right, we have come full circle, and I'm going to quiz Chuck here real quick before we get up.
We'll do that in the next segment.
You want to do that in the next segment?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Erica, for everything today. Thank you for sharing your love of Amy Sherman-Palladino with us. Let everybody know where they can find you on social.
Oh, okay. Twitter and Instagram at Erica, ERICA _Banas, B as in boy, ANS. Twitter, I'm not super active, anymore because Twitter's trash. But occasionally I'll tweet out some stuff. And basically my Instagram has turned into me sharing photos of my adorable dog, which is great, which is wonderful. Everyone wants dog content. And I
love puppy content.
We love those pet content.
She is just, oh man. I think she's now entering her teenage phase in her puppy years. She is such an asshole. It's just every day I'm like, look, you're so fucking cute. So lucky you're cute. Girls, I just want to throw you across the room at this point. But I do love her so much. And if anyone ever tried to hurt her, I think I've never seen John Wick, but I know the premise of it. I'm like, yeah, I could kill someone if they killed my dog.
Yeah, if anybody screws with your pets and you wouldn't kill them, you shouldn't have the pet.
Yeah.
That's my headspace.
All right. Yeah. Harsh rule, but I can't fault it.
All right, we will end it here. Thank you so much. And we're going to go into our next segment. So we'll see you on the other side with our serotonin boost.
Welcome back to Really Big Fan Podcast. You can follow us on all the social medias at Really Big Fan Pod. And of course, you can download the audio version of the episodes on Friday mornings. And you can check out the YouTube version, the video versions, on Thursday night. That was a heck of an interview there.
Yeah, I end up. The thing is that me and Erica are both wordy. And I apologize to anybody who listened to it on the podcast that can't tell me and Erica apart.
Right.
Because we enunciate things similarly. Like there's certain nuances and differences that if you really know me and Erica that you can tell us apart.
Yep.
But I have a feeling sometimes it's hard for us because we tried to do a podcast ourselves at one point. We did one episode. And when we listened back, we were like, oh my God, we sound too much alike.
Yeah.
There's no way you can tell who's talking.
Right.
What the hell? And I had to have come up with a voice or something for it. So
that would have been funny. You tried to do some kind of, you would have just had to do, what is it? Salad fingers.
Oh yeah. The whole time I just have to talk like salad fingers.
Right. Exactly.
I like it when the red water comes out.
What is this garbage?
Or I could do that.
No way.
Well, then I would just sound like I'm from the Bronx or something.
No way.
Drinking out of cups, being a bitch. Mr. Walk me down the walkway. Lead me to the building. Fuck you.
So do you have a quiz for me?
I do. I'm gonna really
All
soft
right.
lob you here.
I'm
so
still
you're
gonna
fine.
bomb it.
You're still gonna bomb it, but I'm gonna soft lob you.
All right.
What are the 3 names of the shows she mentioned?
Oh, that one I could do. It's Gilmore Girls, it's Bunheads, and it's The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Yes.
Woo!
There we go.
All right, I win.
1 of 3.
Oh,
1 of 3.
All right.
Name either 2 specific references that you remember from that episode. Like certain things that you learned, like
Coffee. It's
Okay.
all Gilmore Girls is all about the coffee. You and Erica went and got the coffee at the thing.
Yep.
And-
Do you know any character names or any character styles that we mentioned?
No.
Come on, that one's so easy.
I know that
though.
Sean Gunn has a lot of jobs.
That's where I was looking for that. I
Okay.
was like, I thought if I gave it to you that way, you would be like Sean Gunn. Do you remember his character's name though?
No,
Kirk.
not at all. Not even a little.
And the last thing is going to be more of a preference question because I don't want to hurt you too hard. But what about what we shared was the most interesting to you?
I think the idea, I still don't really have a good grasp on what Amy Sherman-Palladino.
That was also going to be another question. I was going to be like,
gotten
do you
it
remember her
wrong.
name?
Nope. I don't feel like I have a very good grasp on what her writing style sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys described it very, very well. But until I, like sit down and watch 5 minutes of a clip of something from one of her shows, like I still don't exactly understand in the same way that I think if I describe to somebody who had never watched a Joss Whedon thing, how his stuff, like, you don't really understand what the voice is like until you hear it.
Absolutely.
The people kind of quipping back and forth, and you're like, oh, that's okay, now I get it.
It's not as easy to see in what I posted, but if you do go to our Instagram, when I announced like we were going live, I pulled some clips. They were just like GIF stills of the show or whatever, but one of them that I showed you was Emily and Richard. That's Lorelai's parents, Rory's grandparents.
Right.
And he's like, no self-respecting woman drinks 2 glasses of wine at lunch or like a whore or something. He says something like that. And she goes, well, get me a feather boa and take me to Atlantic City because I'm open for business, or Reno or something like that. And so like that's the type of like quippy back and forth stuff where like there was a one that I showed you that Luke and Jay what is his name? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my god. Her first boyfriend, Jess, that's what it was. I knew it started with a J. Luke always wears plaid with a backwards hat, and then Jess is working at the diner and he comes in dressed as him to piss Luke off, and he's like, what, I thought this was the uniform. It's like a lot of that, but it's pretty clean comedy.
When you showed me the screenshot, I thought he actually did think that was the uniform. I didn't know that he was doing it.
Oh no, he was doing it to make fun of him.
I thought he was just dumb.
That's his son that he didn't know he had.
Yeah.
And so he's very rebellious and a pain in the ass.
Right.
I was like, this is why I love Milo Ventimiglia and why I was like obsessed with Heroes and Gilmore Girls, was because he was in it. And, for better or for worse.
I kind of thought Milo's character in Heroes was the most boring one.
Really?
I thought I was pretty much into almost anybody else on that show.
See, I liked him, but like we've also had the conversation before that I really liked Siler.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah.
And like that's why I love Zachary Quinto, was that show. That is the first thing I ever saw him in, was that, and that was kind of like his big.
He shouldn't have come back.
Exposed.
When they killed him at the end of season 1, that should have been it.
That should have been it. Absolutely. Luckily, I've gotten to see him in other things like Star Trek.
Oh,
and he was in some of the seasons of American Horror Story, and that's been cool too.
Yeah.
Very creepy characters, albeit that Asylum season, he is like very horrifying, but he's very good at that too. We were kind of talking about villains earlier today and saying like, people like them are actually really nice and really lit.
Yeah, usually like they get all the venom out, unless you're Chevy Chase.
Yeah, unless you're Chevy Chase. Then you're just horrible all the time, and they have to kill you off shows.
All right, well, let's get to our serotonin boost as we wrap up this week's really big fan podcast. My serotonin boost this week is DMX. So last week they released the full trailer for the Transformers Rise of the Beasts movie, which I may have mentioned that as we get closer to that movie, I get more and more hype about like, man, I got to go see this movie. Whereas when they first announced it, I was like, I need to stop giving Paramount money for making bad Transformers movies. But then the closer I get to hearing Peter Cullen saying, let them come on big, and then seeing Optimus Prime on a big screen, I'm just like, yeah, I gotta do that. I gotta see that.
And you were sitting there going like when he first saw the first trailer, he's like, I'm not gonna go see it. And I'm like, see that bullshit.
Garbage.
Immediately, I'm like, bullshit. As soon as it gets closer, you're gonna be like, well, maybe I can go and see it on like a Tuesday.
Right.
Like, because AMC does $7 Tuesday nights.
Yep.
And plus, why would you not want to put your hand over your heart and stare into the eyes of Nicole Kidman and hear our true national anthem?
I applaud.
So that I was like, there's no way you're not gonna see it.
Right.
And here we are.
So the trailer comes out last week, and it's got DMX's Rough Riders behind it, and it's like a remix, and it's kind of cool. And I'm like, man, I haven't listened to some DMX, and people that listen to our previous show know that like DMX is how we used to blank out the swears, which was really fun. So I go and I look DMX up on a streaming service, and I see that like his most recent release is a version of X Gonna Give It To You with the Czechoslovakian Symphony Orchestra. And I listened to it, and I sent it to you, and I've been playing it for everybody in my life the last week and going like, how has this not been in a movie trailer yet? It's so epic.
It'll probably be in the next Jordan Peele. because he always does that.
Epic. Like,
honestly, Rob Hervilla, I keep talking about this fucking podcast, I'm sorry, but 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, he brings up the fact that, like, you know, there's those moments where they do, like, they slow down a song to make it more dramatic or add these extra undertone beats, and he goes, there's so many songs that they do that with, and they're all amazing.
Yeah.
One of them, I think, was I Got 5 on it.
Okay.
And that's by the Loonies.
Yep.
And one of the dudes that sings that hook did not get royalties until like 2008 or something like that.
Yeah.
So that entire time in the 90s, he didn't get paid for any of that.
That's wild.
And the fact that it was in Get Out, like, it had a resurgence, and luckily he got that money.
Right.
But like anytime that they do that, it's so cool. So with the DMX one, I was really into it. But like at the same time, I was like, I feel like there could have been a different arrangement in it to where it would have felt more epic. It doesn't feel like, it's not a full 100 for me. It's like an 80%.
It is not perfect in that, like, they are playing, because obviously DMX is not with us anymore. So they are playing to his vocal track, and his vocal track isn't perfect timing.
Yeah.
So during the first verse, like, he speeds up, gets like past where the beat is, and then comes back and is behind the beat a little bit. But just the flourishes they stuck on the chorus bit are just, if I was a Final Fantasy boss, that would be the music that played as I was casting Fire 3 on you or something like that. If I was professional wrestling, I would come out to X Gonna Give It To You, and then at WrestleMania come out to that.
Yeah, that would be dope. That would be your CM Punk AFI moment.
It would.
It would, yeah.
Good. I would come out to a symphony orchestra playing X Gonna Give It To You. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, hit a streaming service, check out the symphony orchestra version of X Gonna Give It To You.
Pretty awesome. So I kind of have been not paying attention to things all week because I've been updating my websites. I moved my zine over to its own URL, so now I have acronymzine.com and acronymis.com. So now there's 2 websites because I'm a psychopath. Anyway, it looks a lot better. It looks more legitimate as a media site. But within all that time, I really didn't do much else this week except work on things. So the only thing that has been in my life is when we sit down for dinner, we've been watching Community. And the serotonin boost for me this week is the Dean rapping dressed as
a payday bar.
As a payday bar. It is like, I had seen that clip so many times before I ever watched Community. So it was funny because when I started watching Community with you, we watched like the first 2 seasons and we stopped. But even before that, I had seen that clip, and there's a super cut of Troy Barnes doing a bunch of random things. So like every time that Lou is running around, I'm like, he's all terrain, dummy.
Exactly.
Like those things, I would always say that even though like I hadn't seen it in the episode yet because I'd seen these clips. But the Dean rapping as a payday, and he comes in and he starts like, he sounds really lame at first, and then he starts getting into it, and then he was like, oh, Barack Obama is scared of me because I don't spit rhymes, I drop them for free. Clear my throat, ha ha ha. And then he drops the mic and goes, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was, and panics and runs away. And it is my favorite thing right now. And then you add a little bit more sauce to it, is that there's been an artist in the media, Jack Harlow, who said he was the second hardest white rapper since Eminem, and everyone's been trolling him because he's so wrong. He's absolutely wrong. And so I retweeted it and put that clip there.
Picture of Jim Rash.
No,
just as a payday.
No, literally, I put the clip there. I retweeted it and was like, you are wrong. And put that. Really, it should be Mac Miller. Mac Miller should take the title after Eminem. But Jim Rash.
Did you recognize when we watched the Harley Quinn show, when his voice comes up as the Riddler? Had we watched enough Community at that point that you were like, oh, that's the Dean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they made the Joker, or not the Joker, the Riddler bald.
They did, yeah. So it looks like Jim Rash.
It looks like Jim Rash,
right.
And then you hear the voice, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the Dean.
Yeah.
But like, the Dean has become one of my favorite characters because he's so ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And we just got to the part where Keith David joins.
Yeah, we're in the final season that was on Yahoo, which is fascinating for me because I only watched it the first time they aired it on Yahoo on a weekly basis. So I don't really remember very much. I remember that Keith David was in it, but getting to the episode we watched last night with Britta's parents, I'm like, oh, I forgot this was a thing. I forgot Britta's parents were, in an episode of this.
Yep. And then all of the friends, even Ken Jeong, she goes, Benjamin, he goes, I got bit by a cat. And so they all scream.
Yeah.
But she knew her mom knew his name.
Yeah.
And
So all of her friends.
All of her friends had been talking to her parents behind her
parents.
back is really what the story is. But I saw Keith David in that other episode, and I love his voice acting.
Yeah.
So much. And one of my favorite things he's ever done is the voodoo man, I forget what his name is.
Oh, from Princess and the Frog.
Princess and the Frog.
Yeah.
He does the song.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good. That is the best villain song in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Because Disney doesn't crank out stuff like that anymore. That was really cool because they did the animation style, but he was amazing in that.
I think that Keith David is in that final season of Community as a favor to Dan Harmon, so that Dan Harmon will put him in Rick and Morty as the president. But don't quote me on that. The timeline on that might be a little screwy.
I also really love him in that. The turkey episode is my favorite episode of the Keith David stuff, other than the Give Swifty episode, obviously.
Right, exactly. So that's going to do it for this week's Really Big Fan podcast. We are here every Wednesday morning at 11:30 on twitch.tv/Really Big Fan Pod. As I mentioned earlier, you can get the audio podcast on Friday mornings. The YouTube video drops on Thursday nights. I usually try and rerun the episodes Wednesday night for people who can't make it on Wednesday morning on Twitch, and play a lot of video games on Twitch as well. I didn't get to play games with you last week, but I think we'll remedy that this week.
Yes.
I think we'll get back to maybe playing some Donkey Kong Country or something like that. And make sure you visit our Patreon, patreon.com/reallyBigFanPod. Become a patron. Give us a little scratch so we can continue to do this. And we will. I've already got, I think, the next 3 to 4 guests kind of lined up. We just have to work out the scheduling. But next month is going to be full of Really Big Fan Pods. Of course, we've got Free Comic Book Day coming up this weekend. There's the Guardians of the Galaxy movie is coming up. We'll try not to spoil it for you next week when we talk to you. And May's going to be full of stuff. It's going to be fun.
This is the May.
Absolutely. So we will talk to you guys next week.